English councils are effectively taking benefits from disabled people in order to pay for their care. And this is leaving disabled people with a situation where they either have to pay for their own care or lose out on heating and eating. To speak about this, I've got Ellen from DPAC. Are you there, Ellen?
Yes, I'm here, Crispin.
Hi, Ellen.
Hiya.
I mean, I found this really unbelievable, and it sort of it hadn't struck me as a story until I saw it this week. And I do kind of read around. I mean, I read the papers every weekend anyway. So how is it that this has come about, that disabled people are not able to get by with heating or eating or lose their care? Can you kind of give a background to it?
Yeah, I mean, this has been happening for quite a while now, actually. So it's interesting that people haven't been aware of it. It's an issue we have tried to get more attention for. So it's a practice that we commonly know as care charging. Councils do legally have at their discretion the ability to charge the people that they provide social care services to for that service. I think a lot of people see social care and think of it as similar to the NHS and think it must be, you know, free, but it's actually not. When the welfare state was founded, you know, the NHS was set up so it would be provided free at the point of need. Now, a similar thing didn't happen for social care. Social care has always been provided dependent upon available resources. And so, as I say, councils do have this ability to charge. Under the Care Act, it does say the amount that is charged needs to be reasonably practicable. But what we've seen over recent years is, because of the social care shortfall, that charging policies have become increasingly harsh and have been taking more and more from disabled people. And one of the ways that's come about is by councils now taking into account, when they do the financial assessment to work out how much people can pay, or how much they think people can pay for their social care, they now take into account income that disabled people get through their extra costs benefits, which is disability living allowance or personal independence payment. And as this story says, you know, that it's substantial amounts that are now being taken, leaving people with very little to live on. GMB Union did a survey. They did one in 2018 and one in 2019, and they did freedom of information requests, because there's no central information kept on this. They did the FOIs to all local authorities, and they found at least 130,000 people trapped in social care debt, with more than 93,000 facing debt management proceedings and more than 1,700 people facing legal action. So this is something, as I say, we have been concerned about for a long time now. We had a bit of good news recently. I think you've got some campaigners here from Norfolk. There was a judgment against Norfolk County Council that found that their new policies were unfair, and that was actually found in favour of them. But the problem is that the only way disabled people can kind of challenge their local authorities is by taking legal action. And of course, that's a really big thing for people have to undertake.
Yeah, and we've got some people who have been fighting back on this particular issue. I was trying to get hold of someone who's been working with Mark Harrison. He's here. I found him. Mark, are you there?
I am, Crispin.
Great, thank you for being there. Now, we spoke on the phone yesterday. It's quite a complicated arrangement that's going on with the government sort of delegating the finances to local authorities, but then local authorities having their own policies on how they pay for care. That's the kind of start of it. But there's other bits of it that you were saying, and I was trying to write down this stuff, and it's almost like it's been deliberately made quite complicated. Do you think that's true?
Yes and no, Crispin. Marilyn's here, who was part of the court case, and I'll ask her to talk about the detail in a minute. But in some ways, it's very simple. since austerity and the coalition government and then subsequent Tory governments, they've ripped the heart out of local government. They've destroyed the funding for local government, and the responsibility for funding social care and delivering it is devolved to local government. And so since 2011-12, councils have been making millions of pounds of cuts every year. And that's Greenwich, Labour Authority and Tory Norfolk. But it's simple in the sense that under our system, finance law trumps the Care Act and the Children and Families Act. So councillors have to deliver a balanced budget. And how they do that is up to them. But, you know, they're legally required to deliver a balanced budget. So the leader of Liverpool City Council about 4 years ago said, if he was going to make all his duties under the Care Act and the Children and Families Act, they would have to stop doing every other activity in the council, collecting bins, sweeping the streets, cultural activities, sport, parks, because they only had enough money to do that. And in Norfolk, we've been battling this for 8 or 9 years because the council every year takes millions of pounds out of adult social care. For a period in the mid-2010s, we had a Labour-led Rainbow Coalition, and they were doing exactly the same. So disabled people have been battling this for years, and it's been very difficult to get any sort of traction because there's nowhere to go, because you appeal to the Department of Health and Social Care, and they just say it's your local authorities' decisions.
That's the sort of thing I meant. They kind of, you don't know where to go, so it's kind of confused in that way.
Well, as Ellen said, the only recourse is to the courts, and the courts are very reluctant to judge on local finance matters, and it is legal for councils to take money from disabled people. Social care is privatised. Most of social care provision is delivered by the private for-profit sector, but also it's means tested. So you only have to have 23,000 assets. Anything above that, you pay for your social care. What's new is the councils, to retrieve some of the money they've lost from central government, are now taking money out of people's benefits. So they're going in and taxing people's benefits and taking money to pay for social care. And that, can I bring Marilyn in?
Marilyn's on the call. Yeah, I mean, if you could sort of talk about what happened in Norfolk and how you challenged that.
Yeah. Well, the great news we'll start with is that we did get a judgment, and this is the first judicial review that has gone to this since the Care Act was, since the inception of the Care Act in 2015. Prior to getting the judgment, we as a group did appeal to the Ombudsman, and the Ombudsman's answer was that Norfolk County Council aren't doing anything that the government hasn't said they can't do, but the judge found differently, I'm glad to say. I personally am a long-term carer for my daughter who has disabilities and a young adult, and the scheme that the government brought in, because the councils were asking for extra money, and weren't getting given it. So in their wisdom, the government brought in a new minimum income guarantee, a lowered income guarantee for working age disabled people. So whereas before the minimum income guarantee across the board was £189, it was going to be taken down as low as £131 for young adults between 18 and 25 and £151 for 25 to 65-year-olds, making obviously anything that they got in benefits above that level was taken in care charges. So this was huge amounts for people. And sadly, how it worked out was the people who were most disabled and therefore got higher levels of benefits from the DWP to enable their lives, therefore got charged most, because they had most income to be taken into account from the council. Those same people were also, in the main, because they were severely disabled, incapable, well, very highly unlikely and probably never going to get employment. And the other part of this was that any income from employment was not counted towards income for the charges via the reduced minimum income guarantee. So you had this cohort of people who were totally in a position where they were charged the most because their benefits were highest, and they couldn't do anything about it because they couldn't earn any money from employment. And this is basically how the judgment was gained, that it was discrimination against this cohort of people and that it was actually illegal and against human rights. And what Norfolk did was they actually took the harshest possible line that they could and took every single penny that they were allowed to under the government scheme. And this is what the judge found wrong. For people who are disabled or have disabled people, you will know very well what I'm talking about. For other people, I hope that explanation has made sense. But the cohort that it affected basically were people who were on the highest, the enhanced daily care rate of PIP, and also the support group of employment support allowance. And that, according to the judge, defines the person in the case as severely disabled. And in what was said in the government guidance, and this is in the judgment, which incidentally, I'm leaving a fact sheet behind about this, and the judgment link is there. But what the government had said in their guidance was the government considers that it is inconsistent with promoting living, independent living, to assume without further consideration that all of a person's income above the minimum income guarantee is available to be taken in charges. And that's just what Norfolk did. Now, it's not only Norfolk, this judgment applies to all LAs across the country. And that's where we're up to now from a new group that we've formed, which I think Mark is going to talk a little about. We've talked that in Norfolk. Mark, do you want to talk about JRIMG and what we're doing? Is that okay, Crispin?
Oh, yeah, you have to unmute you, Mark.
Yeah, so after the judgment, a group of disabled people and allies and carers got together in Norfolk, and we set up the Judicial Review Implementation and Monitoring Group. And what we wrote to the Association of Directors of Adult Social Care and said we wanted to communicate with directors right across the country. Could they give us their email addresses? And of course they wouldn't. The Local Government Association has been silent on this, and so has the Association of Directors of Finance. So it's very clear that local authorities don't intend to implement this judgment. So our judgment was that we needed a grassroots campaign to make everybody aware of this case and the implications, because it does apply to every local authority in the country that is charging for social care and taking money from people's benefits. So we set up the Judicial Review Implementation and Monitoring Group, and we're on social media, we're on Facebook and Twitter, and we have an email address that Marilyn supplied. And the first thing we did was we put our own database together of directors of adult social care from every local authority, and we wrote to them. We've also written to ADAS, and I think we've written to the Local Government Association as well. Some local authorities have responded, but there are many, particularly ones that are charging illegally, that are trying to avoid this. So we're encouraging disabled people's organisations, individual disabled people, allies of disabled people, carers, to study the judgment, do Freedom of Information Act requests on their local authorities to find out what the care charging is and to take them on and do battle.
Okay, well, thank you, Marilyn, and thank you, Mark. I just wanted to Mark was you spoke to me yesterday about the council. There is only one council in the country that is not charging for social care, and that's one Labour council that is not charging for social care. Is that right?
Absolutely. Hammersmith and Fulham are a sort of beacon of light in a very dark world. So Hammersmith and Fulham have been working with disabled people since there was a Tory administration there, and Labour councillors and disabled people were on a picket line together, and the councillors didn't really understand how dreadful the situation was for disabled people, and they were educated on the picket line, and they made a commitment that if they came into power, they would make Hammersmith and Fulham, they would make social care free, and they would create the best council in the country for disabled people to live in. And the way they did that was they set up a commission led by disabled people to investigate how you could implement the UN Convention on the Rights of Disabled People across the whole of the council. And they've now got an implementation group that's doing that.
Well,
and
so I don't want to. I just thought I'll now introduce the leader of the council, because
brilliant,
he can speak a bit more. But I thought that was a good introduction to what they're doing. Stephen Cowan, are you there?
Yeah. Hello. Hi.
So,
Chris.
yeah. So is that right? You were in opposition, and then you spoke to disabled activists and made a commitment, and you've honoured that commitment.
Yeah. Well, we did. Mark's given me the best introduction I've ever had, I think. So thanks very much for that, Mark. And there's people on this call who we've worked with throughout, like Ellen's, Clifford's on the call, and others. So. Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting that we went into opposition in 2006 and worked very closely with a variety of different opposition groups as the Conservatives set about implementing a very small state Conservative agenda. And one of those groups was the Disabled People's Campaign Group, which became the Campaign Against Cuts group. And it was more than just being educated, because they definitely did educate us, but they became sort of really quite close friends, you know, and we became a team together, really, and that hasn't stopped at any point. So we began to work out, if we managed to get hold of Hammersmith and Fulham Council, what would be a really good way of ours becoming a beacon of the social model of disability, which is that it's society's role to adapt to disabled people rather than accusing disabled people of the essentially making people suffer and accusing them of making their disability into something that they should have to live with as something to be just bad luck. And we celebrate people's disabilities and try and bend our society to that. So the town hall you see behind me, the Disabled People's Commission helped design that. We think it'll be the most accessible building in Britain for disabled people. And it goes through everything we try to do has disabled people's rights at the heart of our policies. So one of the first things we did when we came in, and it touched a bit like what we did last time, you know, Mark is absolutely right that budgets were absolutely cut. Our budget was in 2010, 184 million. The Tories cut a lot of services in order to meet the government cuts to council funding, and now it's 124 million. And so I am proud that we've cut 118 million pounds of wasteful council spending, and we haven't had one protest from anybody for service cuts, because we haven't cut any services. In fact, we've used that money to reinvest in frontline services such as disabled people's services. So a good example of that is within 6 months we abolished what we call the disability tax, which is to charge for disabled people to get services to allow for home care. So we became the only council in the country to have abolished those services in England. But we also were faced very early on when David Cameron was going to abolish the charges for independent living allowance, which independent living allowance is very expensive. It's severely disabled people. And there's about, at the time, there were 48 people in such circumstances. And that was costing us about 2 million quid. And David Cameron said, we're going to abolish it. And therefore, those people will not get the care they now desperately needed. And that 2 million quid is about 4% on council tax. And so you've got to try and balance things out, because you could have easily said, well, if we cut council tax, we could help an awful lot of people. But actually, we straight away said, we will step in and pay the £2 million for the Independent Disabled People's Fund. We're not going to have those 48 people left without care. Added to that, when we came in, there were 15-minute visits. So these people who were the carers were privatised companies doing 15-minute visits, and they weren't allowed to, they weren't being paid for the travel time to each visit, and they weren't being given the London Living Wage. So we stopped all of that. Our carers are now on London Living Wage. We get paid for travel time, and we got rid of the stupidity of the 15-minute visits. We now have people visit for as long as they're needed in the house. So a lot of that, as Mark said, I mean, I don't claim to be an expert on this. And what I do claim to be is someone who's listened very intently to the Disabled People's Alliance that we've worked with. Tara Flood is a hero. She now works at the council in leading this. She gave evidence to the United Nations on how the world needs to listen to the voices of disabled people better. I think as a society, we don't listen to the voices of disabled people on the whole. We've done a whole lot of things for other minorities, but not disabled people. And it's about time that all changed, and we're aiming to be in the vanguard of that change, and are investing in those services.
Well, thank you for coming on. Great to hear what you've been doing, and good to see you again. And I'd like to bring in Sue Elsegood, who's in Greenwich, which is a Labour-run local authority. But Sue, you spoke to me yesterday. It doesn't seem as though Greenwich is anywhere near the same standard as Hammersmith and Fulham. Could you tell us how the cuts are affecting people in Greenwich?
Yeah, hi Crispin. Yeah, I'm part of a disabled people's organisation in Greenwich, and it's called MetroGAD, and our members and service users were well, deeply shocked when our council not only didn't end charges for care but increased them. And the impact of that has been quite drastic, in that many members have had to think about whether they need to split their hours of support, because they have had to make this unenviable choice between paying their basic heating and food bills and their rent, or having the care they've been assessed as needing but can't afford because of the charges. And obviously there's going to be knock-on effects if somebody stops having the vital support they need. They could have falls, they could have health consequences. People have been extremely stressed about the whole situation. I can't tell you how much fear and stress people are under around assessments, worry about whether they're going to get cuts to their support. But then on top of that, if they do get housing support, they have to find the money from their benefits to pay for that charge, which is a tax, an unfair tax, because we don't have a choice about the support we need. We don't have a choice about the fact we need to get support to get out of bed, or to use our breathing equipment, or to use the bathroom, or to eat, or to have someone assist us to eat. And we are charged for that. Our members and service users are charged. So yeah, we've been campaigning. We've had campaigns outside the town hall. We've had local disabled residents speaking up about the impact this has had on their lives at cabinet meetings. And I think the cabinet were actually quite surprised. I don't think they realised, the politicians didn't realise what it meant, but it was too late. They had not co-produced with us. If they'd have listened to us, talked with us in the first place, I don't think they would have come to the decision they did.
Right.
In Hammersmith and Fulham, they listen and work with people who are disabled equally, and that's the difference, I think, there. And we're looking to emulate that at Greenwich. We are moving forward, but the care charges are still there. And we believe it is a political decision, even though there is a harsh economic environment. Like in Hammersmith and Fulham, they've proven that if they look at their budgets forensically, they can find ways to prioritise supporting people in our community where it is right to do so. And I hope that Greenwich will recognise that and follow suit with Hammersmith and Fulham, and so that we can participate fully in society without the disabling care charges.
Well, thank you very much for coming on. I mean, I can't believe that, you know, you're not that far away, Greenwich and Hammersmith and Fulham, but it just seemed miles away in the way they're treating disabled people, the council. And I'm going to speak now to Linda Burnip from DPAC. So, Linda, are you there?
Hello.
Hi, Linda.
Hello.
Hi. No, we just heard that Hammersmith and Fulham Council have been able to work this out, that there's no charges on social care. So, but lots of Labour councils are not doing this. What's DPAC? How are DPAC campaigning on this? What sort of campaigns can we join? Because obviously, if we contact our local authorities and ask them why they can't follow Hammersmith and Fulham's lead, that would be something. But is there anything else that we can do?
Well, I think I mean, in England, it's just Hammersmith and Fulham, but in Scotland, care has always been free at the point of need. Although it can be restricted sometimes insofar as people who feel they do need care often don't qualify for it. But I think if Hammersmith and Fulham and Scotland can provide social care free of charge, then there's no reason why other local authorities should. I think the most important thing is for people to support our National Independent Living Supports System campaign. We're basically asking for care to be free at the point of need and funded through taxation, and for it to be a national service rather than a postcode lottery depending on where you live, because it really does make a massive difference where you live, what level of social care you get assessed as needing, as well as the charging.
Right, and there's a link there to, we can follow DPAC's Facebook and stuff. Are there any other campaigns? Because the thing is, I picked up this story in the week from The Guardian, not having really understood this at all. And just listening to what people have said today, it's such a massive issue. Are there other issues that are being not spoken about at all by the media? The media ignoring other issues that you can think of that we might need to know about?
Well, sorry, the main things we're campaigning on at the moment is obviously the care tax and reform of social care, but linked into that there's also the new immigration legislation and the impact on disabled people not being able to employ staff as care workers who are non-UK residents, because we've individual disabled people who get a direct payment to employ people are actually individual employers, and as such they've been totally forgotten about in the new immigration rules.
Wow. So they can't hire the people they were hired before, effectively.
Yeah, that's I mean, it's been complicated a bit by the pandemic, because a lot of workers who might have been working here and could have applied for to be able to continue working here under the EU settlement scheme haven't been able to work here, and so they're excluded from applying now.
Right.
So it's quite a complicated situation, but as I say, basically we were literally just forgotten about.
Well, it'd be good if we can keep in touch, because these stories are not being shown on the mainstream media, and we need these to be put out there more. So thank you for coming on this morning, and thank you to everyone else who spoke. I've learned a lot from it.